Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of betrayal, infidelity, and redemption, raw, honest, and deeply human. Each episode dives into the tangled lives of those facing heartbreak and hard choices, where truth isn't always clean, but growth is always possible. Now on to today's story. Chapter 1. The Feed. People always say parenting changes you. They're right, but not in the ways they think. It wasn't the 3 a.m. diaper runs or the sticky Cheerio fingerprints on my OLED panels that did it. It was how I started checking the baby monitor like a day trader watching stock fluctuations. Swipe. Feed. Battery check. Swipe. Kid breathing? Check. No fires? Good. I was at the W in San Francisco, punched over a miniature bottle of Glenlivet and a pitch deck for a Series B round when it happened. I tapped into the camera out of habit. The app opened like it always did, buffering, a quick frame stutter, and then it showed me something I hadn't expected to see. She was laughing. My wife, Alyssa, laughing in our bed. And she wasn't alone. The Mandarin tutor, Kai, the 20-something with soft hands and a neck tattoo that he covered with scarves like that made it more professional, was lying beside her. Shirtless, a half-empty bottle of Merlot sat crooked on the nightstand. Our son, Milo, thankfully asleep in the other room, oblivious. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream or cry or black out. I just stared at the screen, wondering, logically, how long this had been going on. Then I took a screenshot, because I've been trained to collect evidence before emotion. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I delivered the pitch anyway. IPO on the horizon. 20 million in funding secured by noon. My face was still smiling in all the photos they posted on TechCrunch, handshakes and sleek suits, while a slow horror burned somewhere under my ribcage. I flew back to Vancouver that night. By the time I got to our condo, the Merlot was gone, the bed was made, and Kai's scarf was nowhere in sight. Alyssa greeted me in yoga pants and a low bun, mascara perfectly smudged to suggest exhaustion and maternal grace. She kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't detonated our marriage and expected no fallout. "Milo's asleep," she whispered, smiling. "How was the pitch?" "Fine," I said. "We closed it." "That's amazing, Jules. I'm so proud of you." I wanted to say it right then, show her the screenshot, ask how long it had been going on. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I watched her walk barefoot across the hardwood, swaying like everything was under control. It wasn't. That night, I lay awake next to her, listening to the sound of our overpriced air filtration system hum over the dark silence. I stared at the ceiling and thought about algorithms, exit strategies, breach clauses, and what it costs to love someone who's decided to betray you in your own home. I thought about Milo, and how I was going to protect him from this, from her, and I thought about what the hell I was going to do next. Chapter 2. The Threat. I didn't bring it up the next morning. Not while we were eating overpriced granola and sipping espresso from the Jura machine I had researched for 3 weeks before buying. Not while Alyssa packed Milo's lunch and made small talk about a new yoga studio in Yaletown. I played the role of distracted CEO, which wasn't hard. I'd been method acting it for years. But I was watching, calculating. There's a kind of stillness in me when I sense a deal slipping. My co-founders call it shark mode. I stop talking. I start listening for blood in the water. She poured herself another cup and leaned against the island. "You're quiet," she said. "Just tired." I looked up from my phone. "Can we talk after you drop Milo off?" Something flickered behind her eyes. Guilt, or maybe just awareness. She smiled. "Sure." She left 20 minutes later, her Lululemon tote slung over her shoulder like armor. The front door clicked shut, and the condo was quiet except for the soft thrum of life across False Creek. The ferries, the occasional horn, the muted white noise of money in motion. I waited in the kitchen. I didn't rehearse what I was going to say. I knew what I had to do. She came back 45 minutes later, her cheeks flushed like she'd jogged. Maybe she had. Or maybe it was fear. "You want to talk?" she said, setting her phone down. "Okay. What is it?" I held mine up and tapped the screen. The baby monitor feed reloaded. Dark now. Empty crib, but I had what I needed. I swiped to photos and turned the screen toward her. Her face didn't move at first. Not shock. Not denial. Just stillness. The kind that comes from someone who's already done the math and planned for this moment. "Say something," I said. She walked past me, poured a glass of water, and sipped like she was trying to buy time. Finally, she looked at me. "You were watching the baby monitor from San Francisco? Are you serious?" "No. I'm just trying to understand the scope of the invasion." I almost laughed. "The invasion? You were drunk and screwing the Mandarin tutor in our bed, Alyssa." Her face flushed deeper now. "Don't act like some saint. You've barely been here. You live in Slack and pitch decks. You haven't touched me in 6 months. And that's your defense? You're bored, so you cheat on me with someone who gets paid to teach our son how to count in Mandarin." It wasn't about boredom. Her voice was cooler now. Practiced. It was about feeling like I didn't matter. Like I was just the stay-at-home wife of Vancouver's next Elon Musk. I leaned on the island, trying to steady my breath. "You could have said something. We could have talked. We're talking now," she said. Then she reached for her phone. "So here's something else you should know." I tensed. "What?" She turned the screen toward me. It was a file. A PDF. The file name was familiar. One of the early internal strategy decks. Proprietary. Sensitive. Password protected, or so I thought. My blood went cold. "I know what's in there," she said. "Drug pathway strategies. Market projections. The whole China licensing roadmap. Where the hell did you get that?" "I live here, Julian. You leave your laptop open. You talk on speakerphone in the bath. You forget I used to run marketing for a venture firm." I stared at her. "So what? You're blackmailing me now." "I'm protecting myself. In case you decide to lawyer up and try to bury me. In case you try to take Milo." I laughed bitterly. "You wouldn't leak it. That's nuclear. You'd burn your own life down, too." She smiled sadly. "Try me." The room went silent again, except for the soft ping of a fairy horn in the distance. I looked at the woman I thought I knew. The woman I'd built a life with. And I realized something terrifying. She wasn't bluffing. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was war. And she had just fired the first shot. Chapter 3. Contingencies. There's a moment in crisis management we call the pivot. The instant you stop reacting emotionally and start thinking structurally. You diagram the damage. You build containment. Then you launch the counterstrike. It took me exactly 12 hours to pivot. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my side of the bed while Alyssa scrolled through Instagram like she hadn't just weaponized my entire life's work. I watched the glow of her screen, cataloging everything. Her breathing, her calm, the faint smile when she liked a reel of some influencer mom talking about finding balance. I wondered if Kai had left a toothbrush here. At 4:15 a.m., I got up, slipped into my office, and shut the door. I opened my encrypted folder, Project Lotus, Q3 materials only. I scanned every file, checking access logs. She hadn't just found one doc. She'd been poking around for months. Not technical enough to breach the repo itself, but clever enough to pull cached PDFs, old exports, Slack attachments I'd forgotten to scrub. I stared at the wall for a long time, then opened a blank notebook. Not digital. Analog. Black Moleskine, the kind I used in undergrad when everything still felt possible. I made a list: secure IP, dev server access, permissions audit, legal shield, talk to Eli Ree, domestic disclosure threats, custody angle, Milo equals priority, contain Alyssa. No threats, no triggers, keep her calm, backup exit plan, burner phone, crash pad, escrow account. I stared at the list. My hands were shaking. At 7:40 a.m., I dropped Milo at preschool like it was any other Thursday. I kissed him on the forehead, told him to be brave, and watched him walk in wearing his dinosaur rain boots. He didn't know that everything was coming apart. I envied him. By 9 a.m., I was standing inside a glass office downtown, 22 floors above Hastings, sipping coffee with Eli Zhang, our company's outside counsel and the only person I trusted not to flinch. "I need to ask you something," I said. Eli raised an eyebrow. "This sounds like a preamble to a non-hypothetical." I told him everything, without the melodrama. Just the facts. Alyssa's access. The threat. The potential leak. He listened, jaw tight. "Jesus," he muttered. "You sure she'd do it?" She looked me dead in the eye and dared me to try her. He leaned back in his chair. "You know, if that doc hits the open market, even privately, your Series B's dead. SEC filings, breach of confidentiality, maybe even criminal exposure if she emailed it internationally." "I know. You want me to initiate injunction protocols?" "No," I said. "Not yet. She hasn't leaked anything. She's just holding it. Eli nodded slowly. So you're asking how to neutralize the threat without igniting it? Exactly. He sighed and sipped his coffee. All right, there's one option. Tell me. Get ahead of her. Buy her silence. Not with money. With leverage. I frowned. What leverage? That's what you're going to find out. That afternoon, I called Max, my CTO and oldest friend, under the guise of a personal leave contingency meeting. I asked him if we could run a quiet scan of outbound data on all local devices. Not just corporate. Home logins. Browser syncs. He looked confused at first. Something happened? Just a hunch, I said. Max nodded, loyal but wary. He didn't press. He never did. By evening, I was back home. Alyssa had made salmon. I didn't ask if it was guilt or routine. We ate in silence while Milo built a Lego tower between us, blissfully unaware. Later, after she showered, I opened my laptop and checked the data report. There it was. 2 outbound transfers. One to a Proton Mail address. One to a private cloud storage service in her maiden name. I stared at the screen. I wasn't married to a woman anymore. I was married to a hostile asset. Chapter 4, Weak Points. Leverage isn't about force. It's about balance. You find the pressure point, the quiet flaw behind someone's posture, and you lean. Not hard, just enough to make them move. I wasn't ready to confront Alyssa again. Not directly. Not yet. But I needed to understand her. That meant stepping outside of the marriage, the shared Google Calendar, the how was your day? Rhythm we'd both coasted on. I needed to see her like a stranger might. So I started with her digital footprint. It wasn't hard. People like Alyssa leave trails, curated, polished, but sloppy around the edges. I began with her old LinkedIn, still under her maiden name, Alyssa Chung, the same name she'd used to register the private cloud account. Last position, Strategic Marketing Director, Riverstone Ventures. End date, for years ago. Same month Milo was born. She hadn't worked since. That was the trade we made. Unspoken, mutual. I'd chased the billion-dollar valuation. She'd anchor the home. But scrolling through her endorsements and half-finished blog posts about branding for Biotech, I saw something else. Someone who missed being relevant. Her Twitter was dead. Instagram more curated than human. But there was one detail she hadn't scrubbed. A tagged photo, 3 weeks old. It was a patio shot in kits, sunset behind them. 3 women holding stemless wine glasses. The caption read, "The old Riverstone crew reunites. Love these boss babes." The woman who posted it was tagged at claire.harada.vc. I clicked. Claire Harada. Still at Riverstone. Partner now. And suddenly, I had a thread. The next day, I called in a favor. Julian Park, Claire said, voice sharp and efficient. Been a long time. Too long, I replied. You still destroying cap tables in your sleep? She laughed. Only the bloated ones. What's this about? I need 5 minutes. Off record. Coffee or Zoom? You pick. She chose Zoom. Venture capitalists never waste parking validation. We met on a grainy midday call, both pretending to be casual. So, she said, eyes flicking like a hawk's. What's really going on? I'll keep it clean. I think Alyssa's planning to use confidential IP as leverage in a personal dispute. Claire blinked. Jesus, Jules. She's got old Riverstone decks. Strategy files. Stuff I stupidly left accessible. Claire leaned back. That's serious. But not exactly my problem. I smiled. I know, but you knew her better than I did before all this. What does she really want, Claire? Money? Relevance? Control? Claire hesitated. And that pause told me everything. She was brilliant, Claire said softly. But she got benched. Voluntarily, maybe, but it ate her alive. She never said it out loud, but you could feel it. Alyssa needs to matter. To be seen, I said. To be irreplaceable, Claire corrected. I thanked her, ended the call, and sat there staring at my screen. Pieces falling into place. She didn't want to destroy me. Not really. She wanted proof she still mattered. That she could burn my world down if she wanted to. Which meant I didn't need to stop her. I just needed to give her something else to hold. That night, I asked her out for dinner. She looked at me, eyebrows raised. Seriously? I booked Minami. Just us. Milo's with a sitter. She hesitated, then shrugged. All right. Let's see what version of Julian I get tonight. We sat across from each other, the quiet hum of the restaurant masking our shared history. Sashimi, aged sake, polite conversation. You know, I said, after the second course. I've been thinking about your old career. You were good. She froze mid-sip. This is a trap, isn't it? No, I said. It's not. She studied me. What's your angle? I have a friend launching a medtech fund. She's looking for strategic leads. You'd be perfect. Why are you doing this? I shrugged. Because you're not the enemy. At least you weren't supposed to be. She didn't smile. But she didn't dismiss it either. And that was all I needed. Because now she was holding something new. Hope. Chapter 5, The Long Game. We came home from dinner in silence. But it wasn't a cold silence. It was weighty. Like two people walking around a minefield they used to call love. Alyssa didn't bring up the job lead. She didn't bring up Kai. She didn't even pour a drink. She just went to bed early, curled up on the far side, and left a sliver of blanket between us. That was her olive branch. Silence instead of sabotage. I lay there, staring at the ceiling again. It wasn't the same ceiling I used to look at 5 years ago, when we first moved into this condo. Back then, everything felt sharper, brighter. We'd just closed on the place. Pre-construction, 29th floor, panoramic Falls Creek views. Overpriced, but worth it. We toasted in the empty kitchen with cheap Prosecco and kissed on a floor that still smelled like fresh paint and cement dust. That night, she said, "Can you believe we made it?" I said, "We haven't made it. We're just starting." I was wrong. That was the summit. Everything since has been a very slow, very polite descent. I woke at 6:40 a.m. to an empty bed. I found Alyssa in the kitchen wearing one of my hoodies, flipping through a notebook. Her own, not mine. She looked up, startled. "Didn't hear you come in. Didn't mean to sneak up." She closed the notebook. "Milo's still asleep. I was just making a list." "For what?" She hesitated. "Just some ideas. In case that job lead pans out." I nodded. "I meant what I said, you know. You still have your sharpness." Her mouth twitched. "It's hard to feel sharp when you've spent 4 years managing lunchboxes and nap schedules. You were never soft, Alyssa. Just buried." She looked at me for a second too long. "Why are you doing this?" I could have said a dozen things. Because it was strategic. Because the more future I gave her, the less she'd look back. Because my company depended on her emotional redirection. But instead I said, "Because I don't want to hate you." She looked down. "You should. Maybe. But I don't have the energy for war." That was half the truth. I didn't want a war, but I was preparing for one anyway. By noon, Max had confirmed the data trails were clean. No new leaks. No suspicious logins. I had Eli draft a quiet NDA with Alyssa's name pre-filled, buried inside a consultancy agreement for the MedTech fund that didn't technically exist yet. The plan was simple. Give her a path forward that looked legitimate. Feed the fire, just not the fuse. And still, I kept a copy of the original screenshot. Just in case. At 4:15, I picked Milo up from school. He burst into the back seat like joy incarnate, babbling about finger paint and a class hamster named Nacho. As I pulled away from the curb, he asked, "Daddy, are you and Mommy okay?" I paused. "Why do you ask that?" "Because Mommy was crying yesterday. But she said it was because of the onions." I swallowed the weight in my throat. "We're okay, bud. Grown-ups just get sad sometimes. Like when the Canucks lose." He grinned. "The Canucks always lose." I laughed. Genuinely. That night, Alyssa cooked again. Stir fry, her specialty. She danced around the kitchen while Milo played in the living room. She wasn't trying to seduce me. It wasn't performative. It was something else. A return. Maybe just a temporary one. A fragment. But enough to complicate the game I thought I was playing so well. After dinner, she handed me a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" "My resume," she said. It felt good to update it. I unfolded the page. The formatting was dated, but the content was sharp. I recognized the woman who'd landed clients twice her age and held her own in boardrooms before anyone gave her the title. "You're going to crush it," I said. She smiled, but there was sadness behind it. "I miss being someone." I looked her in the eye. "You still are." And in that moment, for the first time in weeks, she believed me. Chapter 6, Outside Noise. I was in the elevator when I got the text. "Max, you need to see this. Now." My stomach clenched. I was already on my way to the office, but the tone told me this wasn't a, "Hey, look at the new UI prototype" situation. By the time I walked into the loft-style boardroom at Helix Biosystems, Max had a browser tab open, muted but flashing. "Twitter?" I asked. "Reddit," he corrected. Biotech investor leaks thread. Buried post from an hour ago. Only a few comments. But it has your name. I stepped closer. My eyes scanned the headline. Rumor. Helix CEO Julian Park's proprietary liver scaffold model was reverse engineered from black box university data? Below it, an image. Blurry, but familiar. A screenshot of a document, one of mine. Dated, watermarked, and annotated. The same doc Alyssa had held over me like a knife. What the hell? I whispered. It's not the full file, Max said quickly. Just a preview. Enough to stir the pot, but not enough to confirm anything. IP address. Throwaway account. VPN tunnel through Latvia. But the post metadata puts the upload timestamp at 2:12 a.m. Jesus. Not Alyssa's style, Max added. Too public. She'd hold out for leverage. This feels like someone trying to detonate early. He was right. Alyssa didn't do leaks. She did whispers. This was a megaphone. I stepped into my office, locked the door, and stared at the wall. There were only 3 people outside the founding team who'd ever seen that doc. Alyssa, our former COO Darren Lynn, and me. Darren left 2 years ago, bitter as hell and NDA'd to the teeth. But not broke. I'd made sure of that. Unless he wanted something more than money now. Control. Credit. Revenge. I dialed Eli again. You're becoming my most codependent client, he said by way of greeting. I told him about the leak. The Reddit thread. The timing. Damage control. Too early, I said. Right now it's just a spark. We kill it quietly, no press release. No flailing. And if it spreads, then we pivot. We find out who dropped it, and we bury them. Eli sighed. You're good at war, Julian. I was better at peace. I came home late. Milo was already asleep. Alyssa was curled up on the couch, hair wet from a shower, laptop open in front of her. She looked up. Rough day. Just noise, I said. Startup noise or family noise? I gave her a look, still deciding. She smiled faintly. Well, let me know which battlefield I belong to. I sat across from her, exhausted. That job lead is real, by the way. Claire's going to call you Monday. Her eyes flickered. You didn't have to. I wanted to. You're smart, and you need space to be someone again. She nodded, looking down. I almost told her about the leak. About Darren. About how close everything was to imploding. But I didn't. Because if she knew the company was vulnerable, she might start wondering what else she could still control. And because I wasn't sure if I was protecting her or protecting myself from seeing the worst in her again. I sat on the balcony after she went to bed. The lights of Falls Creek shimmered like they always did. Steady, expensive, untouched. Below me, the world churned. And somewhere in it, someone had just fired the first real shot. Chapter 7, Darren's apartment. He was living in a sublet in East Van, the kind of place where the blinds never open and the buzzer never works. I knocked twice. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time, like I meant it. The door finally creaked open. Darren stood there in basketball shorts and a faded UBC hoodie, looking more like a washed-up grad student than the guy who used to manage 7-figure grants and chain smoke during product pivots. Well, he said, if it isn't the golden boy, I need 5 minutes. You're 6 months late and $2 billion in valuation early. I didn't rise to it. I just waited. He let me in. The apartment smelled like stale coffee and resin. Not surprising. Darren was always brilliant, but he carried entropy around like cologne. His kitchen table was covered in papers, protein models, and a half-built drone for some reason. I saw the Reddit post. I said, your style. You wound me, he said, cracking open a San Pellegrino. I'd never use Comic Sans in a headline. You're the only one besides me and Alyssa who ever touched that early scaffold file. And she didn't leak it. He gave me a long look. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't. Come on. Maybe it was a lab intern with a grudge. Maybe Milo hit share on your iCloud drive. Cut the shit, Darren. That finally broke the facade. He dropped the sarcasm and sat down, fingers steepled. Why are you here, Julian? Because I need to know if you're planning to burn this thing down. And if you are, I want to know why. He looked away. You built it without me. You quit. I got pushed. You stopped showing up. I stopped believing in you. The room fell quiet. He stood up and walked to the window. Painted shut, same as I remembered from our old dorm days. You remember what we said in the beginning? He said. That we'd change the way the body heals. That it wasn't about money. It still isn't. He laughed. Bullshit. You're a CEO now. You spend more time managing board optics than bench data. You've got a kid in private school and a $4,000 espresso machine. I didn't argue. I wasn't there to defend my lifestyle. I brought you in on the ground floor, I said. Equity, credit, patents with your name. You left. I left because I was tired of being your cleanup crew. You mean your own messes? He turned then, sharp and hollow-eyed. You think I leaked that file? You think I want to torch the only good thing I ever helped build? Yes, I said plainly. He smiled, bitter. Then you really don't know me anymore. I know you're broke. I'm not broke. I'm humiliated. He let the words hang in the air, a confession neither of us asked for. I have nothing left to lose, he said. But I didn't leak it. I believed him. Maybe not completely, but enough. Then help me, I said. If someone else got access, you'd know the trail. You know how we stored early files. You know what we missed. He stared at me for a moment, calculating, wounded, curious. You still using that old NAS box in the closet server? Not since 2023. We migrated. He raised a brow. Did you wipe it? Shit. Back in the car, I called Max. Check the offsite NAS drive. The one we stored in the archive closet pre-migration. You mean the one we donated to UBC? No, I said. The one before that. The local clone. Give me an hour. It took 45 minutes. Max messaged. Unsecured clone drive was accessed remotely last week. Old credentials still live. IP came through an unpatched port. Not Alyssa. Not Darren. Tracing back. 10 seconds later, another ping. Accessed via Kai's student laptop. His MAC address matches the logs. I stared at the screen. Alyssa's Mandarin tutor. The man from the baby monitor. The one I'd written off as a one-time humiliation. Now he'd gone after the company. I sat there in the dark, parked in front of a no-frills, and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I'd spent weeks managing a threat from the wrong direction. This wasn't about Alyssa. Not anymore. Chapter 8, The Tutor Problem. I didn't tell Alyssa. Not yet. There was no upside in confronting her with it. Not while I still wasn't sure how deep it went. Kai could have stolen the file from her laptop. Or from mine. Or maybe he really thought he could impress her by burning down my company. Either way, this was no longer personal. It was tactical. Max traced Kai's location to a co-op apartment in Kits. Rented in cash, likely under the table. His LinkedIn profile, recently updated, listed him as independent consultant in health tech. That was bold. Almost stupid. But then again, Kai wasn't the smart one. He was just opportunistic. I had Max send a calendar invite. No subject line. Just the name. Julian Park. He accepted within 5 minutes. He showed up at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, which told me everything I needed to know. He was nervous, desperate, still convinced he had leverage. He wore a navy blazer over a black t-shirt, hair still too perfect, like he'd styled it twice and redone it in the car. When I arrived, I didn't shake his hand. Kai, I said, you've been busy. He smiled like we were equals. I figured you'd reach out. Did you? I said, sliding into the seat. Because usually when someone tries to blackmail a biotech firm, they don't list consultant on their resume the next day. He laughed, but it was tight. I didn't blackmail anyone. No? Then what would you call it? Leverage, he said. Insurance. I leaned back. You accessed private research from a stolen drive. I copied it, he said. Didn't modify. Didn't release anything substantial. And if we're being technical, the drive wasn't secured. That's on you. You slept with my wife? I said flatly. Let's not pretend ethics are your strong suit. He flinched at that, but only slightly. She wasn't your wife, he said. Not legally. Common law doesn't mean exclusive. I stared at him for a long moment. I built Helix from scratch, I said. 15-hour days, skipped birthdays, missed the birth of my own company's IPO so I could be with my son. You think I'm going to let some wet brain language tutor walk in and burn it down because he couldn't keep it professional? He shrugged. I'm not the one who left his secrets lying around. But you are the one who's about to learn what consequences feel like. His bravado cracked. What do you mean? I smiled, small, measured, and sharp. You want a future in this industry? He didn't answer. I know every fund manager in this city. Every venture firm. Every lab director from here to Seattle. You so much as send a resume out, I'll know within the hour. And when I do, I'll make sure your name is stapled to one word: risk. He looked pale now. And if you leak anything else, If you so much as breathe near another device with Helix data on it, I'll call in a lawsuit so deep your grandchildren will be born with legal fees." He sat frozen. I leaned forward. "Delete the files. Tonight. Every copy. Every clone. And then disappear. Find a new market." "Mandarin's big in Dubai." Still no response. "You're not a villain, Kai," I said. "You're just a footnote." Then I got up and walked out. Back in the condo, Alyssa was folding laundry. Milo was asleep. The lights were dim. It could have been any Tuesday night in any normal family. She looked up at me, searching my face. "How was your day?" she asked. I said, "Handled." She tilted her head. "That a yes or a no?" "It means everything's quiet again for now." She nodded slowly. I stepped closer. "Did you ever give him access?" "No," she said instantly. "I swear to you, Julian. I never. I believe you," I said, more surprised than I sounded. "Just tell me if anything else comes up." "I will." We stood in silence for a few seconds. Then she said, "Are we past it?" I didn't know what she meant. The affair? The leak? The thousand subtle failures that led us here? So I gave her the only answer I could live with. No. But we're moving. Chapter 9. Boardroom glass and kitchen tiles. The board wanted blood. Not literally. Just a scapegoat. The leak hadn't gone public, but rumors had started circulating in industry Slack channels and secondhand whisper networks. We weren't hemorrhaging yet, but if we didn't cauterize the wound, the hemorrhage would come. Someone inside the circle had to be complicit. Marcia, our CFO, said during our Friday board call. "We can't run a billion-dollar company on Julian's gut instinct." "It wasn't gut," I said. "It was forensics. We tracked the access to an external party." "Still," she said, her voice cool, "there needs to be consequence. Otherwise it looks like we're covering something up." "You want a head," I said, "even if it's the wrong one. Public markets don't care if it's right. They care that it's fast." I muted my mic and stared out at the skyline. Vancouver was blue and bright and smug that day. Boats slid through Falls Creek like nothing could touch them. But something was touching us. And the only person who seemed unfazed by it was Alyssa. She was wearing white that night. I don't know why that detail stuck with me. A white blouse and jeans. Barefoot. Hair pulled back like she was headed to a PDA meeting, not pulling out the foundation of our household. "I signed the contract," she said over dinner. "What contract?" "Claire's firm. Project-based PR consulting. 3-month term with option to extend." I blinked. "You signed without asking?" She raised an eyebrow. "Asking who?" "You don't ask before buying another espresso grinder." "That's different." "It's not," she said. "It's just uncomfortable because you're not in control of this one." I set my fork down. Is this about control, or is this about walking away from everything that happened without fixing it? I'm not walking away. I'm building something. For who? For me, she said quietly. And for Milo. If you're still part of that, then good. But I'm not waiting to be told I'm allowed to have my own orbit anymore. It wasn't hostile. It was worse. It was calm. Resolved. Later that night, I found myself pacing the kitchen. Milo's baby monitor was on, white noise humming. The same monitor that started this whole unraveling. I stared at it like it might still betray me. Alyssa came out from the bedroom. She looked tired, but lighter. "You don't have to look at me like that," she said. "Like what?" "Like I'm going to collapse the rest of your life." "Too late for that." She laughed once. Not kindly. "I didn't ask for this either, Julian." "No," I said. "You just lit the match. And you drenched everything in gasoline." That landed harder than I expected. I walked past her, out onto the balcony. Same view, same skyline. But it felt further away now, like the city had pulled back a few inches to make room for what was happening inside our condo. Helix was moving forward. Alyssa was moving forward. And me? I was standing in the middle of a very expensive apartment, trying to decide whether rebuilding meant forgiveness or just survival. Chapter 10, The Last Roadshow. The calendar said Thursday, but it felt like day 79 of the same unending loop. We were 3 weeks out from ringing the bell. Helix's IPO officially priced, oversubscribed, and, according to our lawyers, well insulated against reputational aftershocks. That meant the leak had been contained. Scrubbed. Silenced. Max had torched the backup drives and filed a confidential breach memo under so many NDAs it may as well have been written in blood. No press. No lawsuits. Just expensive silence. But there was one variable no one could predict. Me. Julian, You're on Bloomberg at 10:30. Janice, our head of comms, said through the car speaker. Keep it high level, no pipeline specifics. And don't mention the AI diagnostics angle yet. That's Series B PR. Got it. And smile. People invest in charisma now. I ended the call and checked the mirror. I look like a CEO. Tailored jacket, pressed shirt, fatigue masked by a $90 concealer my assistant slipped me after day 5 of the roadshow. But my stomach was a brick. Not from nerves. From something worse. Doubt. Bloomberg went fine. They asked about Helix's mission. I recited the lines. Regenerative biotech, real-time tissue analytics, the future of healing. They asked about my background. I polished the origin story. Single parent, immigrant hustle, failed first startup, lightning strike with Helix. They asked about the leak rumors. I smiled. Every startup has growing pains. What matters is how you recover. But the thing that stuck with me was the last question. Where do you see Helix 5 years from now? I answered on autopilot. Global presence, vertical integration, helping people heal faster and smarter. But in my head, I saw something else. I saw Milo's face flickering in monitor light. Alyssa closing the bedroom door. Darren alone in East Van. Kai fading from relevance. And me, standing exactly where I always said I wanted to be. Alone. On top. That night, I put Milo to bed. He asked for a bedtime story, something about dinosaurs in space. I ad-libbed a tale about a T-Rex astronaut who couldn't fit through the rocket door and had to learn how to work with others to get to the moon. He was asleep before the T-Rex even got into orbit. I just sat there, watching him breathe. It was the first time in weeks I wasn't thinking about term sheets or exit strategies or institutional shares. Just this. A 7-year-old kid who didn't know his parents were standing on the edge of something irreversible. I found Alyssa in the kitchen, staring into the fridge like it held answers. You're good with him, she said. Thanks, I said. I used to think I'd be a terrible father. You're not. We stood there in the low fridge light. Then she said, I talked to a lawyer. The words dropped like a pin on marble. I didn't respond. It's not divorce. Yet. Just separation language. Custody, condo logistics, asset clarity. I didn't want to blindside you. I nodded slowly. Is this about what happened? No, she said. It's about everything that didn't. I turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. The IPO's in 3 weeks. She almost laughed. Of course it is. I just mean, can we wait until it's over? She closed the fridge and leaned against the door. Julian, I've been waiting for years. She wasn't angry. That was the worst part. Anger would have given me something to fight against. Instead, I was up against reality. Quiet, cold, and surgical. I stayed up until 2 a.m. that night, staring at the condo ceiling. My startup was about to go public. My private life was evaporating. And I didn't know which part was more painful, what I was losing, or how long I pretended I wasn't already alone. Chapter 11. The Bell and the Box. The New York Stock Exchange smells like old money and disinfectant. That's the first thing you notice. The second is the noise, feet, voices, screens, algorithms, all whirring together in a chaotic ballet pretending to be order. I was handed the ceremonial gavel at 9:27 a.m. Eastern. Cameras were trained on me. My name was trending. Julian Park, immigrant founder of Helix Therapeutics, rings the bell on a $1.3 billion biotech debut. The anchor on CNBC said I looked composed and visionary. If only they could have seen me at 4 a.m., slouched on the hotel floor, rereading Alyssa's draft custody agreement while the minibar gin settled like guilt in my chest. At 9:30 on the dot, I struck the brass bell. Applause. Confetti. A synthetic moment to mark something we pretend is organic. Arrival. By noon, we were oversubscribed again. By 2, I'd done 6 interviews. By 4, I'd given my 10th fist bump to someone calling me a unicorn whisperer. And by 5, I was alone in the green room, scrolling through Milo's latest drawing, a dragon made of math symbols. He'd captioned it Daddy Monster. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment. I flew back to Vancouver that night. Didn't sleep. Didn't eat. Just watched the city lights smear past the window as the wheels touched down. Back home, the condo was too quiet. No music. No Milo. No light under the bedroom door. Instead, there was a single box on the counter. A simple one. Brown tape. Handwritten label. My side. Don't worry. not everything. Inside were a few clothes, books, an old mug we got in Tofino, a framed picture of the three of us from Milo's second birthday, balloons in the background, frosting on our faces. I stared at it for a long time, long enough for it to start hurting again. Alyssa came out of Milo's room. She looked exhausted, hair in a loose braid, hoodie hanging off one shoulder. "He's asleep," she said. "He's asking a lot of questions." I nodded. "Did you tell him that we're trying something new?" "Yes." "That it's your fault?" "No." That landed harder than I expected. She sat on the edge of the couch and rubbed her temple. "He loves you, Julian." "I know. You just weren't here to notice." I swallowed. "You picked a hell of a day." She shrugged. "You picked a hell of a decade." We sat in silence. Finally, she said, "Are you happy?" "With the IPO?" "No. With you." I didn't have an answer. She stood, walked over to the door, and slipped on her shoes. Before leaving, she turned and said, "You don't have to lose everything, but you do have to choose something." Then the door clicked shut, and I stood there in a $3,000 suit, holding a half-packed box and a silent phone, wondering if the life I'd built was worth the pieces I'd lost. Chapter 12, Exit Velocity. There's a myth about IPOs, that once you ring the bell, the real work begins. That's a lie. The real work ends. You just don't know it yet. Because after the press and the parties, after the post-IPO dinners with sushi flown in from Tokyo and speeches made over Negronis, the machine doesn't need you anymore. It thanks you. Then it replaces you. I still had the title, Founder and Chief Innovation Officer. But the board had ideas. They wanted structure, scalability, predictability, none of which I represented. I walked into a leadership meeting 2 weeks post-IPO and realized I was now the least essential person in the room. Marcia had operational control. Kai was the tech visionary. And our new CEO, the one brought in to bridge scale and market trust, spoke about our pipeline like it was a press release instead of a pulse. "You'll always be the founder, Julian," she said after the meeting, her hand on my shoulder. "Like a painting in the lobby," I replied. She smiled like I'd just proved her point. The condo felt too big now. Not just because Milo only stayed 3 nights a week. Not just because Alyssa had taken her warmth with her. But because silence amplifies things success can't fix. I found myself scrolling old photos like they were files in a failed experiment. Each one time-stamped with what I missed. Milo in a snow jacket I never saw him wear. Alyssa blowing out candles on a cake I didn't bake. Me, in the background, blurry. Present but not really there. That hurt the most. On Thursday, I picked up Milo from school. He bounded down the steps, backpack thumping, one shoelace undone. "Did you know snakes can fly if they jump off a tree high enough?" I laughed. "Sounds like a startup pitch." "What's a pitch?" "Something grown-ups use to make other grown-ups give them money." He nodded solemnly, then reached for my hand. It caught me off guard. "Can we get hot chocolate before home?" "Yeah," I said. "Of course." We sat on a bench outside JJ Bean, sipping foam and watching people walk by. He turned to me and said, "Mom said we're practicing different living." I nodded. "That's true. But it's not forever, right?" I hesitated. He looked up at me with his 7-year-old certainty, waiting. "No," I said finally. "Not forever. Just for now." That was enough for him. He leaned into my side, and for a few seconds, everything stilled. No boardroom. No condo. No betrayal. Just hot chocolate and the weight of a small boy's trust resting gently against my ribs. That night, after dropping him at Alyssa's new place, an airy walk up 3 blocks from the seawall, I lingered. "Want to come in?" she asked. "Only if it's not weird." "It's always going to be a little weird," she said. "But we're adults. And you're still his father." I stepped inside. It smelled like lemon and cedar. Clean. Lived in. There were fewer things. A couple plants. No artwork yet. But it felt warmer than the condo. "You doing okay?" I asked. She nodded. "Better, actually. I miss things, but I breathe easier." "I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" "For making it so easy to walk away." She didn't say anything. Just looked at me with a mix of softness and sorrow. "Do you ever think about us?" I asked quietly. "Every day," she said. "Do you miss it?" She took a long breath. "I miss what we almost had." Then she turned toward the kitchen, and the moment passed. I left without pushing it. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to win. I was just trying to be real. Chapter 13, Ghost Protocol. It started with a headline. Former Helix exec launches rival startup with bold claims. At first, I dismissed it. I'd seen that kind of PR bait before. There was always someone promising the next frontier. AI pancreas models, mRNA for arthritis, CRISPR in vending machines. Hype was currency. But then I saw the name. Elias Chun, my old co-founder. The one I bought out 4 years ago after a failed Series A and a drunken tirade in a Hong Kong elevator that almost sank our entire seed round. I hadn't spoken to him since. Now he was back, with a sleek website, a high-profile investor group, and a claim that sounded dangerously familiar. Real-time tissue mapping, non-invasive diagnostics, subcellular regeneration, all without the Helix licensing model. I read it twice, then a third time. He wasn't just building something new. He was building my idea, without me. I forwarded the link to Kai. Me. Is this bullshit or stolen code? Kai. Hard to tell. Could just be vapor. But he hired Sanjay. That hit harder than I expected. Sanjay was one of our principal engineers. Quiet. Loyal. Too smart to poach. Too ethical to risk. Or so I thought. I called him. Voicemail. I called Max, our IP lawyer. You need to prepare for the possibility that our internal protocols were breached post-IPO, he said. Which means someone walked off with the prototype logic while your board was busy picking cufflink colors. By Friday, it was on the newswires. Chin's Biotech, Codexcel, claims Helix's core IP was inspired by open academic research. Inspired. The corporate version of "it's just a coincidence." Then came the kicker. A screenshot from a pitch deck surfaced. In it, a timeline showing Helix's initial product cycle, down to the quarter, was displayed as a comparative benchmark. With one extra footnote, former Helix advisor Alyssa Park contributed strategic insight during Codexcel's market design phase. My hands went cold. That name should not have been there. She'd consulted for 3 months. She'd signed the standard NDAs. She was a PR strategist, not an engineer. But perception doesn't care about nuance. The media didn't see a scorned wife. They saw a leak. I called her. She answered on the second ring. Did you know? I asked. Know what? About Chun. Codexcel. Your name is in their investor deck. Silence. Alyssa. I helped Claire's firm with a brand workshop. I didn't know it was for Elias. He was just client X in the brief. You're telling me this is a coincidence? I'm telling you I wouldn't sabotage you. Well, someone did, and now you're in it, whether you meant to be or not. Her voice sharpened. Don't turn this into a moral reckoning. You were the one who lived your life like no one else mattered. This isn't about our marriage. Yes, it is, she snapped. Because if you'd listened, ever, you might have seen this coming. I almost said something I'd regret. Instead, I hung up. I stared at my reflection in the kitchen glass, and I saw a man who was no longer building anything. Just scrambling to keep it from burning down. Chapter 14, The Trait Within. I wasn't supposed to be in the lab after hours anymore. Not since the IPO. Not since they started locking the dev network behind two-factor gates and placing HR liaisons outside sensitive departments. But there I was, midnight on a Saturday, badge still working, caffeine shaking in one hand and a printout of internal access logs in the other. And it all came down to one detail. A ghost user pinged our tissue modeling sandbox 2 days before Chin's prototype went live. IP registered to a co-working space in Mount Pleasant. Clearance level? Admin. Clearance only 3 people had. Me, Kai, and Sanjay. Except I'd revoked Sanjay's access the day he quit, which meant either someone reinstated him, or someone never removed him in the first place. I started digging. Dev logs, Slack exports, badge entry data. I was out of protocol, fully rogue, and burning whatever grace I had left. But the pattern started to form. 2 weeks before Elias's announcement, Sanjay had accessed a series of internal test suites related to our subcellular regeneration engine, something only 5 engineers even knew we were piloting. The code was exported, segmented, then nothing. Until yesterday, when Codexcel's pitch went public with our regeneration model, rebranded under a new acronym, BioR1. I stared at the logs, then back at my screen. It wasn't just Sanjay. It was someone inside Helix who opened the gates. Someone feeding him. I showed up at Kai's townhouse in Yaletown just before 1 a.m. He answered in gym shorts and a hoodie, eyebrows raised. You look like hell. Thanks. I need to know who's been restoring user permissions in the backend, specifically to Sanjay's old credentials. Is this a board request? No, this is a founder's request. Kai exhaled slowly. You're serious? I handed him the printout. That's not from PR. That's from the server logs. He scanned it, frowned. Jesus. Yeah. We sat down at his kitchen table and started parsing metadata, timestamps, device IDs, server location traces. 20 minutes in, we had something. The account used to unlock Sanjay's ghost profile was created by someone in DevOps, but the requests were approved by a senior analyst in growth strategy. Growth strategy doesn't even have product access, I said. They do if someone overrides the admin gateway. Kai looked at me. You think it was Claire? Claire Zhang. Our director of growth strategy. Sharp. Diplomatic. Former classmate of Elias Chun at U of T. She joined 6 months before IPO. Impressed everyone. But I remembered one thing now. Something small. During the Helix holiday party, Claire had jokingly referred to Elias as the one who got away. Professionally, of course. And I hadn't thought twice about it. Until now. I couldn't go to legal. If I triggered a formal inquiry, the board would ice me out completely. Founder paranoia, jealousy, vigilante tendencies. No, this had to be surgical. I needed leverage. So I called someone I never thought I would. Darren, ex-CFO, fired last year after clashing with the board over pre-IPO dilution terms. Bitter, smart, very, very bored. He answered like he'd been waiting for the call. You need dirt. I need metadata. Whose? Claire Zhang. A pause. Interesting. You finally realized the leak wasn't just your wife. I ignored the dig. Can you do it? Already halfway there. Turns out people don't know how to cover their tracks when they're too busy networking. Send me what you find. And when this blows up? It won't, I said. But I was lying. This was already on fire. Chapter 15, Controlled Burn. Darren came through by Monday. Encrypted files. Slack transcripts. Calendar entries. A mirror of Claire's private GitLab commits. Even a draft email to Elias that had never been sent. Keep the pulse steady. I'll flag the real signal under JS if Park pushes. JS. That was Julian Park. Me. She was building a parallel narrative, painting me as unstable, obsessive, a founder unraveling after the IPO. And worse, she was doing it while smiling across boardroom tables and nodding through strategy calls. I stared at the screen and felt a familiar itch, rage at the edges, threatening to spill. But I didn't smash the laptop, didn't call her, didn't fire off a nuclear Slack thread with CCs to legal and PR. Instead, I called Kai. We're setting a trap, I said. We created a dummy project. Codename, Echelon 9. It looked real, technical, advanced. A supposed breakthrough in subcellular adaptation using AI-stabilized gene chains. All jargon, no substance. We slipped it quietly into our internal innovation tracker. Gave it minimal access clearance, just enough to make it feel exclusive. Then we seeded it with fake metadata, decoy test results, a few buzzwords only a dev insider would understand. And we let it sit. Claire took the bait 2 days later, accessed the tracker under a dev alias, downloaded the prototype report. No notes, no comments, but we saw the ping. Then we waited. 3 days later, CodeXL updated their media page. Exciting developments in adaptive sequencing. More to come. It was too close, too fast, exactly the breadcrumb we needed. We cross-referenced timestamps, logins, and the IP address Darren had flagged. Everything lined up. I had her. But I still didn't go to the board. I went to her. Private conference room. 7:45 a.m. before her meeting started. She walked in, coffee in hand, and froze when she saw me. Julian, I wasn't aware we had a meeting. I smiled politely. We don't. I just wanted a moment. Off the record. She sat slowly, measured. All right. I slid a folder across the table. Inside, screenshots, logs, Darren's audit trail, and the CodeXL timestamp. She didn't open it. Just stared at it. Then at me. What do you want? An admission, off the record, that you facilitated the leak. No, she said evenly. You want revenge, or redemption, or some way to still matter in a company that's outgrown you. I let the silence hang. I could take this to the board, I said. I could bury you in legal and let the public chew on the optics. But I won't. Her eyes narrowed. Why not? Because you're not the endgame. You're just a symptom. She looked down at the folder, then finally opened it. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. You can't prove I intended harm, she said. You already did. She said nothing. I stood, adjusted my cuff, and nodded. I want your resignation by end of week. Quiet. Clean. I'll draft the PR myself. And if I don't, I paused at the door. Then I stopped playing nice. That night, I poured a bourbon and stood on my balcony overlooking False Creek. Lights shimmered across the water like neurons in low light. Somewhere in that skyline, Elias was probably celebrating another media coup. But I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about Milo. About legacy. About the difference between winning and surviving long enough to rebuild. I wasn't done. Not yet. Chapter 16, The Molecule and the Mirror. Elias agreed to meet me at Botanist. His choice. Flashy, expensive, and full of people pretending to listen while checking their net worth on silent phones. Fitting. He wore a cashmere blazer over a mock turtleneck, like a TED Talk had come to life. Hair slicked, tint suspiciously fresh for July in Vancouver. Julian, he said, standing up. Glad you came. I sat across from him, didn't shake his hand. I'm not here for nostalgia, I said. He smiled. Of course not. But still, this is overdue. I waited while the server poured sparkling water. He didn't order wine. That was new. Maybe he was trying to project control. Too late for that. You took our prototype, I said calmly. And you used Claire to get it. He leaned back, unbothered. Careful with words like took. The line between inspiration and theft is thinner than you think. Especially in biotech. You didn't just cross the line. You buried it. He nodded, swirling the water in his glass like it was Merlot. Funny, coming from you. You cut me out 4 years ago, bought me out for pennies, then turned around and raised $15 million off my concept. You think I forgot? I didn't flinch. That was a business decision. This is one too, he said. His smile faded. You made Helix too tight, too sterile. You choked out the risk takers, the misfits, the people like me who see the leap before the landing. I studied him. You want to be the revolutionary, but you're just another thief in a better suit. He shrugged. Revolutionaries are always thieves, Julian. We steal fire from the gods. It's how progress works. I slid a flash drive across the table. Server logs, IP traces, Slack exports. Enough to crater Codexcel's credibility if it ever hits a courtroom. He didn't touch it, but his jaw tensed. I'm not suing, I said. Yet, but I will if you make me. So what's this? A warning? No, I said. It's a choice. He raised an eyebrow. I don't want your company. I don't want your ruin. I want you to back off the regenerative model. Pull it from your roadmap. Stop poaching my team. Leave Helix alone. He studied me for a long beat. Then laughed. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone. One text to Darren. One tweet with an encrypted download link. One legal nudge to the Times. His name would be mud by morning. You want to find out? Elias looked at the flash drive, then back at me. His eyes weren't angry. They were calculating, like an AI paused before choosing the optimal outcome. After a full minute, he leaned forward. You get your silence. For now, but don't pretend this is over. I stood. It is for you. I didn't wait for dessert. Didn't look back. Outside, the air was heavy with West Coast salt and the promise of rain. False Creek shimmered under the streetlights. I texted Kai. Julian, Codexcel's backing off. Kai how? Julian. Reminded him who taught him how to lie. Chapter 17, The Quiet Room. There's a room in my condo I hadn't stepped into in weeks. Milo's room. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't know how to walk in without thinking about that night. The baby monitor, the red Merlot teeth, the Mandarin tutor half-naked in the same sheets my kid still curls into when he's sick. But tonight, after everything, after Elias, after Claire, I opened the door. And there it was. Tidy. Undisturbed. A rocket ship mobile still turning lazily above the bed. His stuffed axolotl leaned against the pillow like it had been waiting. I sat down on the floor, crossed my legs like he used to tell me to. Crisscross, Daddy. Like at school. I let my head rest against the edge of the bed and closed my eyes. I've been chasing something most of my adult life. The next breakthrough. The next raise. The next round. The next title. Always a horizon that moved when I got close. And I thought if I kept moving, I'd earn the right to stop. That piece came after the IPO, after the Series D, after the acquisition. But I was wrong. The horizon doesn't wait. It just moves faster. Helix will survive. Claire's gone. Her resignation rolled out through PR this morning, pursuing other opportunities. Codexcel pulled their adaptive regeneration teaser off their site, citing timeline reevaluation. The board's quiet now, respectful, a little wary, maybe, but not circling anymore. And yet, sitting there in the dark, I didn't feel victorious. Just present. And maybe that's more valuable than winning. Later that night, I picked up Milo from Melissa's. He came running out in socks, backpack bouncing, face still sticky with watermelon juice. "Daddy," he shouted, flinging his arms around my waist. Alyssa lingered in the doorway, arms folded, watching us with tired eyes. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We're past apologies, past anything resembling us. But there was something in the way she looked at me, as if, for the first time in months, she believed I wasn't just surviving. I was there. Back at the condo, Milo pulled me into his room, pointed at the stars on his ceiling, and whispered, "I missed you here." "I missed me too," I said, more to myself than him. He yawned and curled into the blanket. I sat beside him until his breathing slowed. Then I stayed a little longer, just listening. Epilogue, something honest. 6 months later, the Helix board accepted my formal resignation. No drama, no headlines. Kai stepped into the CEO's seat, which he should have done years ago. He's better with the investors anyway. Calmer, smoother, less likely to glare at someone mid-pitch just because their slide used Comic Sans. I kept a small advisory role, not because I wanted to, because Milo still needs RESP contributions, and I'm not proud enough to leave money on the table. But the day-to-day? That's over. The biometric keycards, the red-eye flights, the 3 a.m. sprints before earnings calls, I gave it all back. And I started something different. It's called Low Tide Labs. Just me, a few engineers I trust, and a small office tucked into the second floor of a reclaimed building off Powell Street. Brick walls, bad heating, great coffee. We don't pitch to VCs. We don't wear badges. We don't chase billion-dollar valuations. What we do is slow science. Small batch biotech. Personalized therapies for rare disorders, stuff too niche for big pharma to care about. The kind of work that used to get buried in white papers. I forgot what it was like to build something because it mattered to someone, not because it would boost our ARR. Now I remember. Alyssa moved to Victoria. She's dating someone who works in urban planning, apparently. Good guy. Drives a Subaru. We're civil. Co-parenting well. We still don't talk about what happened. And that's okay. Not everything needs resolution. Some things just need containment. Milo's reading now. On his own. Devouring every science book I leave lying around. Last week he asked me what CRISPR meant, and I gave him the 10-year-old version. His eyes lit up. "You can edit DNA? Like a pencil?" I smiled. "Exactly." He nodded slowly, like he was storing the thought for later. Then he went back to his Lego, building a satellite station on Mars. Sometimes, when the office is quiet and the lab machines are humming, I'll look around and think, this is enough. No headlines. No monitors. No Merlot. Just something real. Built from the ashes. Held together by steadier hands. Mine.